Hey everybody, this is Jace with RMUS and I'm here with Caden today. We're going to be taking you through the BRINC aircraft. So as you know, today is our focus on public safety. And again, specifically we're talking about the BRINC. This may be something that some of our customers have seen, some haven't. It's a fairly new addition to the RMUS toolbox, as I like to call it. So Caden, give us an idea, who is the BRINC for? What's its primary goal? And give us a brief overview of how it functions.
Yeah, so the BRINC is very use case specific, like Jay said. It's just another tool in the toolbox that's, like I said, very use case specific. It's made for the public safety, like the SWAT guys, the police officers, whatnot. Because it can breach through the windows, it's very indoor specific drone. You don't want to fly it outside a whole lot.
Right, so this is not our Overwatch aircraft.
No,
this isn't our we're keeping an eye on an area or our overall security thing. The purpose of this aircraft is, it's not reliant on GPS for its navigation. It's obviously outfitted with the bumpers that we see on here. It's a very durable aircraft. We've watched this thing bounce off walls and be like, oh no, it's okay, and then putting it back up in the air. Yep. So that's really the purpose of this aircraft. So really, again, focusing on what you had mentioned before with attachments. We have lighting on the front. We do have an attachment point here on the bottom. There's a glass breaker attachment, additional lighting, auxiliary lighting, and that kind of stuff. So the purpose of this is either breaching or entering those confined space environments. To be able to get that kind of situational awareness that's so important for police officers, right, and public safety personnel. And tell us a little bit about the deployment, because that's another one of those things that's really a point about this aircraft.
Definitely. Let me start by saying I went to a training from BRINC on this, and one of the check boxes that we had to check off is getting it in the air in under 45 seconds.
Right.
To pass the training, you had to do that. So just by saying that, it's very quick deploy.
Right. I mean, yeah, again, that's the idea, and that should give you some kind of idea of how quickly you can go from out of the box, sliding a battery in, and genuinely, if I remember correctly, going to the training, you slide the drone across the floor.
Yes.
And again, we've talked about that durability. That's just another one of those points about durability. And the purpose of this aircraft is to be in those difficult situations, in those hard things.
Yes.
But the other thing I want to talk about is the camera. Talk about a little bit about the payload that's on the front of this aircraft.
So the camera itself is just a standard FPV camera. There's no high definition or anything. It's an analog signal. So it's not great for inspections. That's why we talk a lot about the perching, being able to listen through the two-way radio. You've got an IR sensor on the front, so you can see in the dark without having to have the spotlight if you don't want it.
Right, and it's not thermal. It is more of a night vision type of sensor.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
An IR type sensor. And that's actually something, the next point, you touched on that a little bit that I want to talk about, is that two-way communication. Talk to us a little bit about how that two-way communication works. It's actually stunningly simple and very effective.
Yeah, and it's one of my favorite things about it. They just use a standard SIM card that comes with the drone, and you call it from your cell phone. The drone has a cell phone number, and right there you got the speaker and a microphone that you can sit and perch for, they say, up to 10 hours.
Right, so the idea behind this is and as much as anything, I mean, this can be used as a de-escalation tool.
Yes.
So when you talk about perching, we're talking about flying into an area and basically setting it down.
Yep.
And we can either set it down on a shelf or even on the ground or something like that, turn off the motors, and basically it can just sit and observe.
Yep.
And again, they're talking a standby time of what was about 10 hours, right?
They say up to 10 hours, correct.
Up to 10 hours for a standby time. So we can just set it there and watch the area. But again, the other option is, again, we're talking de-escalation.
Yep.
Being able to call the drone.
Literally call the drone.
Call the drone. It's just a 10-digit phone number. It's nothing special that we can call, and we can communicate with whoever a potential victim, that's inside, the suspect. And I mean, we can't tell you how many stories we've had and heard from people that are like, this was a massive de-escalation event. So again, that this is what this is focused on. It's a very specific use case, but as I like to say, there is no one Swiss Army knife. There's not one drone that does every job.
Right.
There's just not. Every job has its own specific things. I mean, some things are better at that than others, but still, you need all of the tools in the toolbox.
Correct.
And this is one of those that's going to fit that need very, very nicely. So again, now that we have kind of an idea about the aircraft itself, we want to introduce our guest. It's Bobby with BRINC Drones, and let's check in with him. Go ahead, and Bobby, go ahead and introduce yourself real quick.
All right, how are you guys doing? Thanks for having me. Bobby Lemon. I am with BRINC Drones. I'm a trainer with BRINC Drones. I formerly with Fort Wayne, Indiana PD, retired after 22 years, and was involved in the air support unit, our drone unit, also with the department.
Gotcha. And then, tell us, that this is what we really want to get into is, everybody knows, and we've seen it, it's a drone, it flies, it has a breaker and attachments and stuff like that, right? But really we want to know, how does this come into play in the real world? What can you tell us about some of the situations, maybe involving an officer or something like that, kind of where this made the difference for you guys?
Absolutely. Well, when we started our indoor program, as far as our indoor tactical program, our drone team is deployed every time our SWAT team is called to an incident. And it came into fruition where we were trying to think of ways that we could make it safer for the officer and all parties involved. The big thing now is, trying to de-escalate the situation. So what better way to start your de-escalation talks by introducing a drone instead of actually introducing an officer into that scene? And a particular situation stands out where, the could have placed an officer in danger, but using a drone kept officers and parties involved safe. And I'll keep names and everything redacted in this
Sure.
for privacy. We're called to situations, and we're called to the situation where it's a domestic, possibly a weapon involved, and suspect is said to still be in the home, but unknown location. Obviously, it takes time to get all the resources together. There's officers on the scene that has a perimeter around the location, and SWAT team and the air support unit arrive on the location. After several hours of loud hailing, trying to make contact with the suspect, officers are just unsuccessful, and that happens a lot in these situations where we just don't have any lines of communication and we don't know where they are in the house. And obviously, we want to know that person's location before we send an officer in that house. The go-to has been ICOR robots or small throw robots that SWAT teams across this nation use on a regular basis, and which they are very effective. But as you know, sometimes when we get into these houses, there's obstacles, debris that prevent these robots from continuing on. So we have to have other options, and that was the case in this. House was very cluttered. The robot could only go so far. So that at particular time, we decided to introduce the drone into the residence, and we were able to deploy that drone. A lot of times, the drone is deployed from a armored vehicle, and pilot is in the armored vehicle, and deploy the drone in. We were able to clear the downstairs of this residence. Couldn't locate the suspect at that time, but we. Upon entering the residence, we noticed that there were a bedroom door was closed and locked from the inside. So the assumption already is that, okay, here we have this room that's locked, can't get into it, robot or drone from the inside. And that's where we were thinking the suspect is. So the tactic changed there where we would bring the drone back out. And this is where an advantage of using a drone instead of the robot, that we can actually deploy this drone through windows. So that was the decision made. Breach a window and deploy the drone into this bedroom that they couldn't see from the interior. Um, Drone was deployed, or I'm sorry, window breached, drone was deployed into that window. We were able to go into the window and completely secure that room that we couldn't from in the inside of the residence. So we were able to see everything in that room by use of the drone, getting under the beds. Closet doors were open, so it was fairly easy. And we realized and were able to establish that the suspect was not in that room. And that in itself is safety for the officer on that scene, that we didn't have to deploy them into the unknown. Luckily, and it came out that the suspect was not in the room and he was not in the residence at that time. But that's an unknown that we were able to safely deploy that drone and not put officers in harm's way.
Sure. I mean, that makes perfect sense. That's the thing is again, it seems like it's the tale for us that, in pretty much any circumstances, that our job is really in providing drone hardware is it's like, let's take people out of harm's way is what it seems like a lot of our business is.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We were talking a little bit too that you had another story that involved a civilian where the drone helped save the civilian's life. Can you share that story with us?
Yeah, yeah, and this one really stands out with me because the civilian happened to be a young child that was involved in this situation. A lot of domestics, where officers go into, there's family involved, and we want to be as careful in those situations to keep not only the officers safe, but also the family that's involved in this. And when it comes to young children, that makes it even more important to be as safe as possible. And in this particular situation, like I said, it was a domestic situation, and shots had already been fired in the residence where it was a wife and a young child. Um, Officers respond to the scene, and at this, we're as we arrive on these scenes, we're trying to gather as much information as possible. But the information that was given at that time is that um, the wife or girlfriend was able to make it out of the residence, but the young child was still in that residence with the suspect. And this is an apartment complex, so that makes it even more complex on how we're going to respond to this, because you have the incident location, and then you have several other apartments around that we have to keep in concern also. Um, we get into the location. We were able to establish communication with the wife in this case, and she was adamant that the suspect is in the home with her child, and we needed to react immediately. So there again, instead of introducing tear gas and officers into the situation that would possibly escalate this. Keep in mind, we've already got shots that have been fired, and we're looking for a young child in this. The option is coming with, if you have the option, which is very important. If you have this technology at your disposal, use it. It was decided we're going to deploy a drone before we even think of entering, in which case with the BRINC, if we can deploy and also, deploy, locate, and we can also communicate. And they're, again, trying to de-escalate that situation. So we decided to deploy the drone from a first floor location. We were, traversing stairs with a drone is no issue. So it's a fairly quick process. Well, we were able to get the drone into the residence, and we can, with the capability of being able to communicate and talk and listen back and forth, we can not only just talk, but we can just listen. And we were able to enter the residence, clearing that first area, and just take some time and listen to see what we hear, and not only what we see, but also what we hear. And at that time, we could hear a young child crying in the residence. We couldn't hear any other voices or any other movement, but just a young child crying. And we didn't know the location at that time. we continued on listening, and then we decided to start to try to communicate. So speaking through the drone, the officers are talking to the young child to try to get him to give us his location, and at least make himself known to so exactly where he is in that room. No success in that. We could just hear the child continue to cry. So as it decided at that time to continue on to clear this apartment of any danger for the officers and that child. Officers were able to go through with the drone, clear the location, all bedrooms, bathrooms, under objects, and that's an advantage of having this drone because we can get into places that some of these robots can't. After clearing that entire apartment with that drone, I'd say within a matter of minutes we were able to clear that apartment. We still did not know the location of this child, but we could still hear the child crying. It was decided to perch the drone to still have a view of the area and make sure it was still clear. And we continued to perch that drone and just kept that line of communication with that child, letting them know it's all right. He can come out. And it was amazing to see that this child actually responded to this drone. He was eventually came out of the bedroom. He was covered up with some blankets in his room, underneath on his bed, covered up with blankets, and he came out to this and let himself be known to this drone where officers were able to go in, successfully retrieve this child where he was unharmed. No injuries to the officers. It just completely de-escalated that situation by the use of a drone, and we were able to determine that the suspect did leave prior to officers arriving, but the child was unharmed. And that situation just stands out to me because not only we can use drones for overwatch and getting situational awareness of the scene, but also being able to introduce that drones and successfully locating a missing child was really stood out to me.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, aside from obviously clearing the area and making sure that that officers and public safety individuals aren't. I mean, it's when we say public safety in the literal sense is that's what that you guys are there for, and being able to I mean, gosh, being able to communicate with a child from an aircraft that's perched in a location. I mean, obviously that's a unique capability that has proven itself to be valuable time and time again. It's one of the things
Absolutely.
that makes us such a fan of this aircraft and such a fan of what public safety is being able to do and executing missions with this aircraft, guaranteeing the safety of, again, not just law enforcement, but civilians as well, for sure.
Absolutely. And and this is when you're thinking of and this is the least important of the any incident, but every time these incidents come up, there's a cost to a department and the taxpayers. Every time that button's hit, there's thousands of dollars involved in this. And you want that scene taken care of safely and as efficient as possible. And by being able to cut these times dramatically by using a drone, being able to go in and clear that location, cutting that time in half, it's not only saving the departments involved money, but also the taxpayers. This is the taxpayers' money at work, and this is a way to cut those costs.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I mean, just looping back to it, and for a lot of our viewers, I mean, this may be their kind of first introduction to BRINC. We're kind of starting to run short on time, but Bobby, hey, we just want to thank you so much for being willing to come on and share some of your experience. It really, I mean, we're the experts here. We're trying to bring these things into market, but I'm not a police officer. Caden's not a police officer. No one here is an officer or a public safety isn't public safety personnel. So really being able to bring this home and really understand, you know, what a valuable asset this can be is extremely useful. So again, you know, Bobby and everyone from BRINC Drones, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave us with before we sign off?
And you know, thank you for having it. It was an absolute pleasure being here. And you know, it's great to see many departments out there finally looking into this technology and actually thinking of ways to implement it into their you know, their daily patrol, things of that nature. And it you know, it's just going to only get better. You know, drones are they're here, and I think they're here to stay. And it's just it'll be better and safer for everyone involved, the public and also officers.
Definitely. I mean, you know, we've seen adoption of this. I can say after I just hit my 5-year work anniversary.
I hit 1 year.
That's right. So,
Yeah.
you know, and we can see just in, you know, in that space of time how much more accepting not only, I mean, the public, but also, you know, law enforcement personnel higher up, you know, the buy-in to the idea that drones are our valuable piece of our arsenal has only been increasing. So, and I think BRINC, again, you guys are doing a lot to help along with that. So we appreciate that. So again, we're kind of running out of time, but Bobby, thanks again for joining us. We really appreciate your insight and your stories. And for any of our viewers, any of our listeners that are popping in here, if you want more information about the BRINC, as always, make sure you contact the RMUS team, the RMUS sales team, and we'll make sure we get that information for you. Thanks again for tuning in.